Chapter 3. Chapter 3. Chapter 3. Police force during early period of Islam. Police force during early period of Islam. Introduction of policing. Introduction of policing. Introduction of policing. To keep law and order in the state, Hazrat Umar Farooq Rahmatullah alayhi 581 to 644 AD was the first Muslim head of state who established police department for the first time in the known shrines of human history. He was also the first Muslim ruler in history of the humanity to separate judiciary from the executive. During his rule, qazis, judges were appointed in sufficient numbers at all administrative levels for the administration of justice. They were chosen for their integrity and Quranic scholarship in applying Islamic injunctions to suit the exigencies of time, place, and circumstances. High salaries were fixed for them and they were not allowed to engage in trade. In on of his ordinance issued to judicial officers, Hazrat Umar Farooq Rahmatullah alayh laid down the following principles. Verily, justice is an important obligation to God and men. You have been assigned the charge with this responsibility. Discharge the responsibility so that you may work in accordance with the laws of God and munificence of the people. Treat the people equally in your presence, in your company, and in your decisions, so that the weak despair not of justice and high placed have no hope of your favor. The police force at the time was known as Ahdat and the police officers as the Sahibul Ahdat. He introduced the system of patrolling and in type of cantonments chowkiyan for the first time. Hazrat Umar Farooq Rahmatullah appointed Hazrat Abu Huraira, known to be a famous compiler of the Hadith, as the police officer for Bahrain and gave him the following instructions to perform duties. Keep peace in the area. Let not the people contravene law. They should measure correctly. Nobody should build any house on roads so as to hinder the passage. No one should overload an animal. Nobody is allowed to sell or buy liquor. System of jails. There was no jail system before the advent of Islam. Hazrat Umar Farooq Rahmatullah alayh introduced this institution for the first time in Islamic State. He bought 10 houses in Mecca and used these as prisons. He also set up jails in various cities of the country. He also introduced the system of punishment for the criminals, not only those who committed but also those who were the main tools to let those commit the crime. He also introduced the punishment of exile in the state. He exiled Mitijan to an island as a punishment for drinking the liquor. The Central Police. Hazrat Ali Rahmatullah 600 to 661 AD was responsible for instituting the office of the Central Police and brought the concept of policeman. He designated the policeman as Ash-Shurta and the police officer as Sahibu Shurta. However, the Umayyads 41 to 132 H, yes, 661 to 750 AD did not adopt this name. They called the police officer as Sahibu Ahadat. When the Abbasids 132 656 H, yeah, 752 1258 AD came to power, the police officer once again became Sahibu Shurta and the policeman as Ashurta. The chief police officer at Baghdad ranked almost as a governor, and under the later Abbasids' rule, he presided over a divan and held the rank of a minister. Under the early Abbasids' rule, he was the chief of the bodyguard of the caliph and executed death sentences. Amir Muawiyah 41 to 60 H, yeah, 661 to 680 AD, was the first caliph to have a bodyguard, and since then the bodyguard had become a part and parcel of the military force at the capital. During the first two Abbasid caliphs' rule, 132 to 136 H, yes, 750 to 754 AD, uh, 136 to 158 H, yes, 754 to 775 AD, Persian soldiers performed the duties of bodyguards. Al-Mahdi, the third caliph of the house of Al-Abbas, 158 to 169 AD, 775 to 785 AD, selected 500 men from the Ansar of Al Madinah to be his bodyguard. Al Mutassim, the eighth Abbasid Caliph, made the great mistake of discarding the Arab bodyguard and forming a standing military corps of Turks. Dressed in splendid uniform, they galloped recklessly through the streets of Baghdad, knocking down everybody in their way. There was a howl of rage against him in the capital. The caliph had to remove him to Samara, a new city on the banks of river Tigris, about 60 miles away from Baghdad, where barracks and buildings were built to settle all Turk troops with his bodyguard. This force was officered almost entirely by Turkomans, freemen or slaves, and before long assumed the part of the Praetorian guards of the Roman Empire, deposing and setting up sovereigns at their own will and pleasure. Prison administration. Among the pre Islamic Arabs, it was customary to lead the prisoners along the streets in chains. People would give them alms, and that was the means of their sustenance. Even after the advent of Islam, the same old custom was continued till Hazrat Ali Rahmatullah alayh put a stop to it and maintained the prisoners from state revenues. Amir Muawiyah and his successors continued the same practice. Imprisonment is not one of the punishments the Quran had prescribed. It is only to educate the prisoners to be the well-wishers of the society. The Holy Book, the Quran, prescribes principles of punishment for the crime and leaves the bylaws to be framed under the requirements of time, place, and circumstances. With the degeneration of the Muslim Commonwealth, certain evils crept in. Political crimes on the part of the discontented subjects and suspicion on the part of the rulers, who were not sure of their title to the great office of the caliph, created a new contingency, that of placing the suspects and others in prison. During the early rule of Abbasids, the old practice of leading the prisoners along the streets was revived. Then there was a strong reaction against this revival. Thank you.